Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, wherever in the world you happen to be. My name is Carmen Mazzara, and I serve as Executive Director of the Coalition for American Public Diplomacy and Leadership. It's great to see so many Capital members and friends on this call. For those who may not be familiar with Capital, we launched in January of this year, 2025, so we're almost at our 12-month birthday. And our work really is to strengthen and expand the Bridge USA community by working through education and best practices sharing, like you're going to hear today, and telling the story about the tremendous power of these programs. We bring together local communities all across the United States and advocates and allies in more than 40 countries as a way to really help these spaces grow and stay strong and to bring all of the wonderful people who contribute to the success of these programs together to always keep improving. I am beyond excited to welcome Kathy Winfree, who is the BridgeUSA City Liaison for the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce, to our conversation today. Kathy wears many, many hats, which I will tell you about in a minute. But I also want to say that as we go, this session is being recorded, so you will be able to revisit the great content she's going to share with you. Capital members, you'll be able to revisit her wisdom as well through our regular sheet of takeaways and one pagers. So whenever you can't remember exactly what she said, it will be there for you too. We have some great questions that were pre-submitted, but as we go through, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll have a chance for her to reply to that after we do a brief conversation between us. And then for those of you who are interested in Capital and learning more about us and the work that we do, I also invite you to learn more about us, to apply, to join us. It takes truly less than 3 minutes. And you can come into the Capital community and be a part of all of the different conversations like this that we have. So, to hear more about our speaker today, I want to briefly list all of the many roles that she has in her community, but also talk a little bit about what she says are the fundamental driving principles behind all of her motivation to do this work. So, Kathy is in Myrtle Beach, the work and travel liaison for the Miami Beach Grandstand. She is the Bridge City USA liaison for the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce. She is the president of Bridge to Nations Ministries. She's a board member at Impact Ministries, and she's a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee in their community, which we know is always a hot topic of conversation among the Bridge USA family. Because of her tremendous work with Bridge USA, she has been able to visit J1 participants and their families in Kazakhstan and Bulgaria and Serbia and Taipei and the Philippines. And all of that comes, she says, from her passion to build communication between their community and those who sacrifice so many things to visit and participate in the Bridge USA program. She eagerly seeks out all the kinds of resources and networks from State Department colleagues, from folks like us at Capital, other stakeholders, employers, other community support groups, and all of that wonderful spirit of collaboration comes together so that she can facilitate a safe and welcome environment for all of the amazing young people who come to visit them in South Carolina. So, Kathy, thank you for being here with us today. I'm really excited for this conversation because we know what power community support groups have to really make this a wonderful experience for Bridge USA participants. So, to go way back in time, can you tell us how the community support group in Myrtle Beach got started and some of the nuts and bolts of how you got things off the ground?
Okay, first, I just want to say thank you, Carmen, for the opportunity, and thank you, everyone who's listening, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. So one thing that I would like to start out with is a community support group is not one person, it's not one organization, a building, or event. It's a group of people that rally together for one cause. And I think that's one thing that Myrtle Beach has truly learned. It's we rally toward that cause. So how did we get started? Our chief, Amy Prock, she was not chief at the time, but in 2011, we had an accident. There was an accident with one of our participants, which was actually tragic, but we saw that, as something to use as a stepping stone, to make improvements in the future that this would not happen again. So Chief Prock and Pete Woods, who was a private investigator, and Stephen Green, who was at the Chamber of Commerce. They all rallied together and they said, what can we do? We need to improve communication. We need to improve safety. We need to start working together as a city, that this doesn't happen again. So they actually created a task force. And then in 2013, they started to actually do welcome orientations, which started out very small, but that was done at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center, and started out just as a welcome from the police, bike and ped committee, giving safety and giving out little backpacks and information and emergency numbers and things like that, just to make sure they had some type of a connection. The biggest thing that we have learned is there's got to be a connection. There's got to be a number that they can call. Like we have an emergency number now. There's got to be a number that they can call to get the help and the resources that they need. So that actually kicked everything off for the city. And then during that time also, Todd Wood, who is with Impact Ministries, was giving out water bottles and snacks to all of the lifeguards in the summer that were coming from the different countries. And that was a ministry of his, and he was thought just to build that. So he got together with Christy Morris, who was at Midtown Vineyard Church. She's an outreach pastor there. And they thought, well, why don't we just do a little coffee shop, where they can come and sit, have free Wi-Fi, and some conversation. They always love to practice their English. So, let's just let them practice their English and just talk about their day. So they opened their doors, and Christy said, first week, no one showed. Second week, no one showed. Fourth week, no one showed. And they just started to go out in the community and really talk about it and, speak to the participants in the restaurants and everything and do the invites. So it slowly grew. It was like just a little coffee shop mentality. But then they started, they just knew they need food because they would come hungry. That hour after work, they would come hungry. So several volunteers from Impact Ministries and Midtown Vineyard started to bring a potluck. And the kids loved it. It's like they loved it. And that, we always say now, even now, free food. I mean, free food is a draw to anybody. But it started out with a lot of, conversations and relationship building and just the free food and the free Wi-Fi and, the feeling of safety in home. We hear that all the time. I feel safe, and this hot meal makes me feel like I'm back home.
So it sounded like there were a lot of different efforts that were then able to be brought together into the initial launch of the community support group. How much time did it take to get all of those folks pulling in the same direction and not just sort of doing their own thing?
So I think the first year it did really well. I wasn't involved the first year as liaison or as volunteer. It's just what I'm telling you is some of the stories from Christy and Todd. But it grew quickly. When you develop that atmosphere of safety and love, and be a resource to them as like a home away from home, it grows quickly. I know Christy had said, in the beginning, she had several volunteers and the attendance would be anywhere from 10 to like 40, per night. And they had enough volunteers that were so excited, about all the nations coming here that it was almost one-on-one as far as volunteer to participant. But that slowly grew, and that's one piece of advice Todd and Christy have always given. Do not try to go big. Never try to go big. You actually build what we've seen, what's made us sustain this, I do believe, is we built strong relationships with the city in the very beginning, just like we have really deep relationship with our police chief, with our police department, with our chamber, with some of the employers, with the local community. It's really about building a really strong foundation, inside the city itself. And then you can pull all these things together and it helps that to grow quickly, I think.
And it sounds like some of those folks got it pretty quickly what the value of this was. But are there arguments or the messages that you found really resonate with those communities for our folks on the line who maybe need to go actively to their police chief, didn't have the police chief come to them, for example?
Hmm. I think in a community where the Bridge USA program exists, I think once you education is a major key. Just educate. The more education, in all that, and the more relationship building, you're going to see that grow quickly. I believe that a community knows, the benefit of having those participants in their city. And it's just a matter of education and really trying to grow and pull those groups together.
And did you actively go out to those folks? Did you go to the Chamber of Commerce or the local employers and say, hey, we're doing this, come on board? Or did they just hear it in the wind?
So in the beginning, with my job, I was hired in 2019 with the Chamber of Commerce. And I was already involved with the All Nations Cafe part at Midtown Vineyard as a volunteer. But yes, once I was hired, that was one thing that was really on my heart was to always share, wherever I am, and I do, and I still continue to go out to employers, in the community and talk about it. Matter of fact, we have a forum, a community business forum, Carmen, February the 11th. And this is to let the community know, to educate them and the employers and our landlords, about the program in our city.
And is that hosted through the chamber or is that through the All Nations?
It's through the chamber.
Through the chamber.
I can send you that link also.
That's great. So it sounds like the chamber's very involved in a lot of the work that happens. And do you find that to be an effective messenger for you all to keep it growing because it comes with the business angle on it?
Yes, I think that does. Any area where you get support, it's going to grow as long as you've got that army around you and that team. But yes, the chamber does know the value, of the program. And once you truly know the value and actually see the participants also as people that have chosen you as a city to come to, you're their number one choice, and that's very, it touches your heart, honestly, when you look at it like that, and who would not want to, be involved and be the best that they can be.
That's a great framing around the relationship between the participants and the community. So after that initial launch, how did you all keep growing? How did you recruit new volunteers? Did the activities change? What was sort of 2.0, the community support group?
Okay, so it was All Nations Cafe itself at Midtown Vineyard was basically faith-based. So the like I actually went into several churches myself before I was liaison for the city and would just do a small program, educate on All Nations Cafe and about all these beautiful participants coming to our city, and there's one thing that we always love to say is, if you love to travel, if you can't travel, they travel to you. They bring the culture to you. And that, I think that through that we recruited volunteers. And actually, there's a lot of people with that mentality. They would love to travel. They can't afford to travel, or maybe health wise, they can't travel. But when those young people start coming in to them and bringing that cultural exchange, they just, it's something that just ignites in them, and there is no issue whatsoever finding volunteers, for the events.
And did the dynamic in this community support group change as you all grew and got new members and volunteers who maybe weren't there at the beginning to hash everything out?
Dynamics do change. First, I would like to say every volunteer that is involved with the church All Nations Cafe is vetted. They are put through a very strict process. Everyone is vetted, with the background check. They go through all kinds of volunteer training, and we try to always make sure to do something in that with culture shock. So you have a lot of different things going on. But now we do have, like, you have a lot of people that come in with a lot of good ideas, and you want to learn, something from them too. So we always say we lay a foundation every year. It's every year things are different. Every year things are very unique. We see different challenges. We see different breakthroughs, and volunteers come in and bring new ideas, and we always look at things, and yes, dynamics do change, and we just say we lay another layer of a strong foundation through those people that brings extra strength to us. um,
Is there an example you have of the group being confronted with a challenge and needing to figure out within those dynamics how to move it forward or how to move forward from it?
okay, we have had two instances, um, and I think these were because these people were very strong leaders that were not ready to be leaders that needed a little bit more help. But yes, we had a couple people that came into All Nations Cafe itself at Midtown as volunteers, and they were raised up in rank a little bit too fast, because we do have rules and regulations and policies and protocols that have been built throughout the years, and they have been proven, and we need to stand by those and be submissive to the leaders. And we had two instances of, we call them long rangers, maybe. They want to be a part of that organization, but at the same time, they want to run over and do their thing also and try to change things up a little bit. But those things were handled, those two were handled by, you just bring them into the office and explain policies and procedures, to them in protocol, and continue, give them another chance, and, work with them and try to raise them up as the leaders that they are actually called to be. But we had two that just were not going to do that, but they were going to try to do their own thing and be a part. But those two, were given a thank you, and this just isn't working, especially after they were given the option of, maybe just sit and, be a volunteer again, and let's just walk through some things. And there was no agreement with that. So that's the only two major things that we've had.
And it looks like we have a request in the chat for some of the training materials and stuff that you all use. If you're able to share that with me, I can get it out to folks as well.
Okay, absolutely.
And so you had this wonderful beginning with all the different pieces coming together. You had lots of different touch points in the community. You had some key anchors of events and places for the students to be. And then you were able to broaden the outreach a little bit. Now that the machinery runs fairly fluidly, like how do you keep the momentum going? And how do you keep people from just taking it for granted? Oh, that's always been there. It will always be there. I don't have to contribute or I don't have to be a part of it. Other people make this go.
I think that there's so many great things going on that they can be a part of. Just like, okay, so we have Exchange Day, which is done by the chamber, every year. And they can be a part of that. That is so much, I mean, that's so much fun. There's so many different things going on. Just like this year, Dan Bullock with International, he has IRH, his International Angels came to be a part of our Exchange Day. And I mean, we had, all nations volunteers and sponsors and other people there. But that was just like a really exciting thing to do. The International Angels were just like, they would grab everybody that comes in and take them over to the photo op and come on, let's, have some fun and, just going out through the water park and, things like that. And then at All Nations Cafe itself, too, you have, so the churches actually come in and prepare a free meal and serve a free meal. So you have opportunities for volunteers to sit at the table, and speak to all the participants. Then they have game room where you can go in, you can play air hockey with them, you can play foosball. There's Uno, there's all kinds of games to play. And then we have, like we started something last year with jewelry making. And Pam Wright, who is actually a member of the Chamber of Commerce, she works at the Chamber. She has like a little a mini mall set up near all these tables where you just come in and you choose, letters, numbers, colors, just it's like just going into a free store, and they will sit there with volunteers and make their own jewelry, make jewelry for their families. Then we have the artwork where they actually draw, they can paint on like a little postcard and write a sweet note to their family, and it's sent back home. And volunteers are involved in all those things. And once you get inside that framework and you see all those cool things going on, it's like you're just as excited as the participant is. You want to come back. You're making those deep relationships. I mean, we have one volunteer that actually went to Ecuador last year to a wedding. She was invited to the participant's wedding, and you hear things like that all the time. It's just amazing relationships that pulls them back. That's always a draw.
Once you get them hooked, they won't let go. I love it. So I'm about to open it up for questions in just a second, but I have one last one for Kathy in terms of if you don't mind sharing some of the basic nuts and bolts. Now that the CSG is so well established, how many people does it take broadly, full-time, part-time, occasional volunteers and staff? And what are the typical costs for a program as robust as what you all do so that our folks who are maybe at the beginning have something to aspire to in terms of growth?
Okay. So I would say we have 3 paid staff, which would be myself with the chamber and Christy Morris with Midtown Vineyard Church. She's outreach pastor, and Todd Wood, who is Impact Ministries. So then you have you've got your leaders, and then as far as cost, we have so much community involvement. Like from the very beginning, you've got the free food from the churches. They prepare that food, they come in and they serve that food. We have, I'm not sure the amount of grants, but there should be. We actually get grants from Burroughs and Chafin, and I'm sure there's probably, grants in every community where you could reach out. Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee donates free lights to us. And that is, to me, that's a biggie. Visibility is a biggie. Then our ministry, Bridge to the Nations, at the welcome orientations, we actually give away at least 1 free bicycle, sometimes 2, at every welcome orientation with disco lights, to light up the city. But as far as cost, honestly, this is community driven. I know the first year, Todd and Christy said they probably spent about $5,000 the first year, to get it up and running. And now we have, different things. Okay, so All Nations Cafe has bike repair, free bike repair at cafe at night. And I know there's probably a small expense in that, but some of that is paid through the bicycle rental that they do there. They rented 180 bicycles out for the season this year. They do that with a $100 charge to rent. They get back a $50 deposit when they return the bike, and they get free bike repair. So it's honestly, it's a matter of just community involvement. Once you get the community involved, it's not a lot of money involved at, per se, the community support group itself. But I know a lot, it's a lot of money. I know that, but it's like the community supports it, and you don't look at that because the funds don't come out of just one pocket.
You spread the joy among a lot of different organizations. So
Hmm. Hmm.
excellent. All right. Let me turn to some of the questions that we got in advance. And then for folks who've got stuff to put in the chat, please do. Um, One question from our colleagues in Ohio was, how do you get the local community to understand that BridgeUSA programs are vital to their tourism if they don't already understand it?
Good question. Because um, that is constant communication. That's something we are still dealing with. And that's something we will always deal with because of the people that move in and out that are not aware of the program. But it honestly is about educating every person. When you speak to someone about the program, you can give a really quick, overall of what the program is. Like I do really quick, State Department sponsor, recruiter, university, how they pay their own money. They pay their own expenses to come here, and they bless our city. That's just a quick overview of what I actually share with the individuals. And that's something that is ongoing. And because, the typical we do here, oh, they come and take American jobs. Why do they do this? Why do they do that? And you have to help them understand everything. And especially, I mean, there's jobs in Myrtle Beach that we can't fill. And it's like that in the tourist areas. And we just, it's a constant communication.
That sounds like, and it also sounds like you've built a great network of allies and amplifiers so that you don't have to always be the one. You have other people who know what you're going to say and put it out there. I
I
also
like
put in the
that.
chat, yeah, I put in the chat
Mhm.
for folks too. We have some introductory language if it's useful, including some of those myths and the realities that Kathy talked about. So if any of that is
Mhm.
useful, please feel free to steal blatantly from Capital and its website. My
Mhm.
next question comes from our colleagues in Virginia. And they're curious how you communicate with sponsors. So, getting their helpline information, finding out who the contact is, making sure the students know how to reach their sponsors in case something happens.
Mhm. So I always like to go back to, because I struggled with this in the beginning when I first took the job. All sponsors have, their 800 numbers, their 24-hour, emergency numbers where you can contact them. Um, what I always do is ask, okay, let me see, your emails, who is your primary contact? Because they do have primary contacts, when they come here, and they have the email, they have the phone number. And that is what I encourage everybody to do. Find out, look at an email, look at their DS form, make sure that you connect with those people properly. But we always, if we can't get the information that we need, the State Department has all of those sponsor phone numbers and the email addresses, and you can connect to that and be able to communicate that way. But usually it's just done one-on-one, by each situation, and looking at emails and DS forms.
So, a lot of that comes through the students themselves and reminding the students that they have that information. They just may not remember exactly where on the form to find it. You're
That's
telling me
right.
university students don't listen, Kathy? I'm shocked to find this out. One of our colleagues from New York is curious what you see for 2026, how you see the program changing, how you see what goes on in the community changing as everything changes around us.
Mm. The answer about 2026 is a hard one. Where all the things with the administration right now, that's a hard one. But I love what Rebecca Passini told us in Myrtle Beach when she was here recently. This program, these participants, like I said, they pay money to come to the United States. They provide their own way. So that's like a safety net, I think, for them, and they spend money while they're here. They actually help us, they help the United States. As far as Myrtle Beach, we did really well this year. We have Dan Bullock and IRH, great relationship with them, and they were almost full, and there's just a bond that has developed with them that I just see that Myrtle Beach, as our housing grows and more relationships grow, that it's only going to get better. I mean, we had 2,500 participants this year, which is a little bit down from 2018. I think we had 3,200. But, we all had to restart after COVID, so we're continuously rebuilding. But I think I'm excited about the new housing. I'm excited about our forum. I think Myrtle Beach is going to do really well. All Nations Cafe actually had 300 plus at our events on Monday and Wednesday this year. So I just think by word of mouth through those participants that loved it, I think that we're going to have another great year next year.
That's great. One of our colleagues from Florida, who's from a bigger city, was curious if there are any lessons that you think could translate from a context like Myrtle Beach up to a big city like a Miami or a New York or some of those other places where there maybe aren't those deep relationships as easy to come by with the police and the city leadership.
Hmm. That's a tough one for a girl that only knows that foundation. Uh, I honestly think, I thought before, I honestly think there's so many good people in any community. It's just a matter, even if you haven't found that relational part, with the police department, with the chamber, like do try to establish yourself in that first. It's so important. But there's so many good people in a community that really would like to help, just start something small, start small. And as the community, as the leaders of the community see that you're doing a great work, they're going to come alongside you. When they see that positive result, they're going to come alongside you.
And actually, to build on that, how do you keep people informed about what you're doing, and how do you build that into your workday or make it a volunteer's responsibility to educate leaders about the great things that are already going on?
So the cafe itself has a check-in system for every participant and every volunteer that comes inside the building. Like those cafes are for volunteers and J1 participants only. So you go into it's called the planner, I think. So you go in, you put your email address in, you put your phone number in, and you put the country that you're from.
Okay.
And that is that actually you will register that the first time. You get a name tag. No one's allowed inside that building without a name tag. And we also have security on site, like trained security. So that's one thing they look for is your name tag. But in that process of, just having access to all that information, um, You can send out emails to the participants, to the volunteers, give updates. We've even done updates of severe weather. Cafe might be closed early tonight because of severe weather. But that is the communication tool there. And there's always, like I said, there's always trainings. I give updates on different events and what's going on, as far as in the State Department, and yours has been used a lot too. Thank you, Capital is being used. And I need to talk to you about the forum because we need more material. But yes, that's the biggest key is just getting access, to email addresses of the volunteers and the participants, and have Facebook and Instagram, like always blasting those. And then with the Chamber of Commerce, we actually have a website also, which we need to update because it's called J1. We need to go BridgeUSA. We need to rebrand, but we actually have a website too that gives information on orientations, on special events, on cafe nights. All that's on the chamber site.
So is there a regular schedule of communications that goes out either to the participants who've signed up for the cafe or volunteers who put their names forward, or is it more ad hoc as terrible weather comes or as you have something to share with them?
So the like the Facebook and Instagrams are updated, like they know their pictures are going to be taken. They sign, a little, it's okay to take my picture because there's constant communication with, pictures being taken. Hey, check out Facebook, your picture's on Facebook, and that's just the relational part. But once cafe is started, once the orientations have started, that's pretty much, that's just set in stone. And they have that on brochures that have been given at the airport by airport greeters. So all that is pretty much just set in stone. So we don't have to continually, announce that. But yes, it's those websites that are just used for fun and information.
And making the kids feel good too.
Yes.
We only have a few minutes left, so folks, again, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I have a few more that were submitted earlier. Um, we've talked a little bit about the chamber, and I know that you work directly for the Myrtle Beach Chamber. How instrumental were they in all of this, and the South Carolina Broader Chamber as well? How involved have they been in making part of your success?
Wow. So I just go back to, what happened in 2011, and they just became like the chamber along with the police department, but the chamber, they became a driving force, of like, especially when they saw the need for a liaison, they were like, okay, we need a communicator, we need an advocate, we need someone that will be a resource, for us and for the community and for the participants. So that's a hard one for me. That's I just see them as, I mean, it's constant communication, just like our forum that, is going to be in February. There's save the dates going out, like it's, good communication from them, good support. I myself actually write a liaison report once a week, to the chamber of everything that has happened, and, get their feedback. And I give my feedback on how are we going to improve this situation. So they are a very strong report. And I mean, they're very a strong support. Um, but
Well,
that was a little bit.
yeah. No, I'm glad they were wise enough and had enough foresight to invest in somebody to be the central hub of that information. Some
Mhm.
communities, I think, try to do this more ad hoc and assume that it just kind of happens, but it sounds like Myrtle Beach has been very deliberate about all of these pieces.
It don't just happen, it can go left. You just like also many different directions. Yeah. Mhm.
And so that's the last question I had for you, which is, are there lessons you've learned along the way, either things you're glad you did or things you wish you hadn't done that our colleagues who are earlier in this process can either emulate or avoid as they launch into their own community support group.
Hmm. I used to be a little bit shy and a little bit scared. I had resources all around me, that I didn't recognize. And it's a matter of, like your job, you do an amazing job with what you do. And it's honestly just knowing, I think, who we are, what we're called to do, how we can make a change, and see the resources around us, and dive into those, that we have access to, and just help build. It's like I was saying, it is layer upon layer and just recognize, the resources and jump out there and help build because the resources are everywhere. It's just a matter of seeing those things and stepping into that.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
thank you for always being a resource for us. And to our colleagues on the line, Kathy has very graciously agreed that if you do want to connect with her, let me know. And she's open to talking with different folks and different groups. And that's very much the same spirit that Capital was created to build is we know how much amazing work is going on and we just want to bring everybody together and harness it to keep these programs strong and growing and delivering these life-changing opportunities for Americans as well as our international folks. So thank you,
Mhm.
Kathy, for all of your wonderful wisdom. I'm sure all of our colleagues are going to race out and start CSGs in their community right now. And Capital is here to help if we can. But I do want to thank all of you for being here. A recording of the session will be available on Capital's YouTube page as soon as I can get it up. For our members, you may have seen in the Friday email this morning, we do have our next webinar, our last webinar of 2025 on December 16th, focused on how particularly our folks in country overseas can build relationships with universities for recruitment. We've also are building out our calendar for 2026 and we'll have wonderful content for alumni and sponsors and hosts and community allies and agents and the whole spectrum that's within the Capital community. For folks who are not yet in the family, please come on in. You're very, very welcome. It truly takes less than 3 minutes to join us through this website right here. And I hope you all have a wonderful closeout to 2025 and a great start to 2026. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Capital webinar. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Carmen.